Okay, hear me out. I love Iron-Blooded Orphans, and I really think it could have been one of the greats. A must watch, 5 stars out of 5, Oscar winning, people screaming out its neighborhood rooftops type of anime. But it's not. Because while I absolutely enjoyed it, and I urge you to give it a chance if you haven't, its greatest strength is also its greatest weakness, and that is its ambition. You see, for better and for worse, Iron-Blooded Orphans, IBO for short, is all about what it makes you feel. And boy, you better watch your kitchen sink, cause this anime will be trying to throw it at you. And sometimes, this quest to get an emotional reaction from the viewer can get a bit too fast and too furious. Understandable for an anime that deals with orphan children living in poverty, children that undergo body-changing and life-risking operations just to get a job. A job that's usually as a soldier that gets treated like cannon fodder. So yeah, IBO has a lot of deaths, so many of them. And sometimes, when death comes knocking at the door of one of the main characters, well, it doesn't just knock gently at the door. It's more like the police force trying to break down the door. You can kind of tell it's coming. And just like the poor fellas on the video, the end result is not really what it could have been. Death wax. Anime-loving Redditor's favorite concept. It's one of the ways foreshadowing can be used in storytelling. Foreshadowing is great because it lays down the groundwork for future revelations, giving stories a sense of depth and making the emotional highs and lows stronger. IBO itself has great moments of subtle foreshadowing. However, when foreshadowing is not used carefully, it can lead to underwhelming results. And, well, let's just say that trying to guess character deaths in IBO is like trying to hit a pinata blindfolded.
I do not see.
Except you're not blindfolded and the pinata in question is laying helplessly on the ground. A character will get introduced or talked about at the beginning of the chapter, show up 5 minutes later, and then die at the end of the next chapter. This problem would be solved through a slower and more purposeful storytelling. Planting the seeds early, letting them grow in the background, and then reaping the rewards further down the line.
Ambition well ahead of adhesion.
To the principles of good foreshadowing. And speaking of characters, there's just too many of them for only 2 seasons. And get this, they are all great characters. Every single one of them. Well, like 90% of them? And maybe Mr. Plot Device, protected by plot armor. 2 seasons are not enough to flesh out the intricacies of every character for full emotional impact.
Stop the clip!
Okay, I know that so far I've only said negative stuff about this anime, but the way I see it, most of IBO's problems come from its pace management. Just like in motorsports, pace is defined by how slow or how fast you're moving relative to your measuring stick. A car's pace is measured by how fast it goes around a track, and an anime or manga's pace is measured by how many events take place in one episode or volume. IBO's pace can be inconsistent. It feels like it's rushing through events in the first season with the way it heavily foreshadows deaths. And then there are moments in the second season when stuff slows down and it seems like we're just loitering. And then suddenly everything gets turned to 11 and everyone must quickly take their positions for the fight about to take place. You get the point. With this in mind, we could either A. point out the writer's mistake as such and blame them, or B. blame Bandai or whoever was in charge for not giving the anime enough time to flesh out its story. So let's pick one of these options. That's right, I'm going with option number 3 for 69,000. It doesn't matter. It's not really up to me to criticize whatever decisions were taken. All I can do is watch and enjoy IBO. The only reason I even brought this up in the first place is because having the anime's limitations firmly understood and in the back of our minds helps a lot when it comes to fully appreciating this Gundam series. This is why I think I enjoy this anime a whole lot more on my second viewing. Oh, and if you really are watching this video without having watched IBO but feel like giving it a shot, I feel it's my duty to tell you that the anime deals with some heavy stuff. This is down to the creative vision and direction of the anime, and there's no way you can avoid this. It's what IBO is about. So with that out of the way, now it's time to get into spoiler territory. And let's make this a little bit more positive, shall we? When IBO works, it does so magnificently.
Magnificent.
It sits you down on a chair, ties you to it, and stabs you with feels.
No problem!
Repeatedly. Now, despite the second season having what is arguably a bigger knife to stab you with,
no!
I'm stopping this metaphor, it's just too weird.
Sweet!
The first season is better. No question about it. Both seasons have their flaws, but the reason the first one comes out on top for me is its structure. The first season is neatly packaged into one main arc. Take Rolina Peacecraft, to Earth. Everything that happens in it, all of the smaller storylines, they'll fit into this bigger narrative, so it has a real feeling of progress. It also lets the anime deal with all sorts of fascinating ideas like responsibility, loyalty, decision making, freedom, vengeance, and many more. And one of the reasons this arc works so well is because it's focused on a single man, proud member of the top 50 best hairstyles in anime. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Lord. Orga, Commander-in-Chief of Tekkadan, is the real protagonist of the first season, and I think that is absolutely the right choice. Watching Tekkadan struggles through the eyes of its leader gives us an insight into just how difficult Orga's job really is. Orga has so much charisma, it's easy to see why the rest of the gang follow him. Mika, Eugene, Akihiro, Shino, and Biscuit all admire and respect their leader. They know him as an unstoppable force of nature that's always pushing forward, and if you ask them to jump off a building, I'm pretty sure at least one of them would do it. While characters like Shino and Chad struggle to deal with the deaths of the people they were leading, with Shino even stepping down from a leadership position because of this, Orga Itsuka never leaves his position as Tekkadan's boss. Yet, all throughout the first season, we are shown that Orga is in no way close enough to being the perfect leader. He is still young and immature. Two characters realize this as well, so they do everything in their power to help Orga improve and achieve his dreams. These two are Biscuit and Nase. Just as Orga is the big brother in Tekkadan, Nase is, in turn, pretty much Orga's older brother. Brought together by chance, they both realize that they have plenty in common, trying to lead what is more of a family than a company to a better place. In one of their first meetings, Nase sees right through Orga's tough guy act and points out his immaturity. Still, he is charmed by Tekkadan's young leader. Later, he becomes a source of wisdom for young Orga. His advice to his younger brother when it comes to the dangers that lay ahead for Tekkadan has a deeper significance than it seems at first. When Nase warns Orga not to lose himself, he doesn't realize that this could come about through the death of another one of Tekkadan's members, and that is of course Biscuit. The only one that is as close to Orga as Mikatsuki, always standing by his side and offering his thoughts on Orga's decisions and ideas. Biscuit offers a more cautious and reasonable take on what Tekkadan should do. He's the brain to Orga's heart, especially in the most crucial moments. So when Biscuit dies, after having disagreed with Orga's reckless way of pushing forward, even the mighty Orga Itsuka stumbles and breaks for the first time. After reaching Earth and still pushing forward towards some future they can't see, Nathe is also one of the first characters to warn us about what might be Tekeden's fate, realizing that the path they're walking is dangerous and impossible to escape. And while he himself suspects this, Orga must keep Tekeden marching on, because that is what Mikazuki is looking for, and because that is what the rest of the gang expects of him. Orga must deal with these expectations while at the same time wanting his family to stop risking their lives and be safe. The first season shows this conflict perfectly. Orga knows he's expected to lead Tekeden to glory, and to do so he must fulfill Kudelia's request. Bringing Kudelia to Earth, however, means that a lot of the Tekeden kids will die, so naturally Orga stumbles at some points. This makes us empathize with Orga, the man who bears the entire responsibility of the children's lives and hopes while he fights for an opportunity with odds of 1 in a million. Well, it's not easy, and it's not supposed to be, and that is what makes it great. The first season's ending feels so good because it's linked with Orga's character arc reaching its own resolution. When Orga finally screams out to his team and family to, no matter what happens, they must not die or he would kill them again? Man.
Chills. Literal chills.
Finally, all the sacrifices mean something, for they have succeeded. The cost was high, but they stand on the shoulders of those who died, and thanks to them, Tekeden has finally reached a better place. So, Orga's character development arc is now complete by the end of the first season. And well, that's bad news for the anime's second season. Whenever Orga gets the spotlight back on him, we get what is basically a repetition of his previous arc. Once more, he must go through the journey of being a leader, and once more we come to the same conclusion. Yes, in the second season he does die, yeah, and his doubt comes from his blindness. Have they reached their place yet? How far should they go? But what I mean is that his big moment before he passes away is when he decides to keep pushing forward, and then he orders his family to stay alive because that is how they win. From a narrative point of view, this repeated arc sticks out like a guy dressed up as a flamingo attending a funeral. I don't know, that's what my brain came up with, okay? Anyways, that's my take on Orga as a character. Now it's time to talk about his other half. If there was such a thing as an easy to solve enigma, that would be Mikazuki. Much of the anime revolves around this character, and rightfully so, but like I said, I don't see him as the real centerpiece of IBO. Beyond half his body not moving, Mikazuki is somewhat limited. He is most of the time a character who doesn't push the plot forward by himself. He instead just reacts to it. And this is not something bad. In fact, I think it's huge that he is the way he is because he perfectly embodies the heartless upbringing this kid's experienced. Even space rats or human debris, these are orphans, and more than that, they are child soldiers. And among these ruthless kids, Mikazuki is Tekeden's very own devil. A perfect killing machine, not afraid to take on any job and give his life for the cause. Always on the front lines, always ready to crush anything in his path. And yet, in the fact that he's reacting to everything that happens, he's many times a bit too slow or a bit too weak to save everyone. I like Mikazuki's character so much that I actually think the anime does him dirty. There's so much hiding under the surface of this character. There's, for example, the moment when his hands are shaking and he doesn't understand why. The amount of stress he's under can be too much for a kid, even for one that can pilot something like Barbatos. And yet for some reason the toil of being Tekeden's last hope and strongest warrior is only shown once. I would have loved to see more of Mikazuki in the second season as an answer to the first season focusing more on Organ. Of course, I don't mean more of Mikazuki fighting, we have plenty of that already, but I mean more of his quiet hours. Those solitary moments spent reading about plants and all the kind of activities that are better enjoyed with some Animal Crossing music in the background. There's of course the question of how to make an anime out of this idea without turning Mika into the lo-fi girl, but doing so would serve as a reminder of Mikazuki's potential to help and create. A reminder that he can be more than just an unstoppable force of destruction and death, more than just Takeda's devil. There's a half-truth in saying that Mikazuki is an arrogant character, but does he deteriorate into a bloodthirsty being that lives and breathes only to kill? Kudal Kyle, worst character of all time, accuses Mika of being someone who enjoys murdering others. And to this I say, OBJECTION! Mikazuki never enjoys killing others. He's too young to understand his own feelings, but I believe that what Mika is enjoying is the art of battle. I now present to you, the audience, two instances where you can clearly see Mika relishes challenging and improving himself on the battlefield, making unpredictable moves to catch his opponents off guard and looking for opportunities to gain an advantage. Evidence number 1. And evidence number 2. What about the joy you can see in his face when he finishes off the worst character in the anime? I think this is simply a case of Mikazuki achieving victory. And this is not always the case. Remember that for all of his impressive victories, Mika has plenty of losses on his record. In this battle in particular, he kept his friends safe and inflicted heavy losses to the enemy. Mika can see this as a flawless victory. And then with a monster kill on an obviously evil character that uses his own comrades as cannon fodder. And this matters because what defines this character's fate is how much he loves, in his own weird Mikazuki kind of way, the people of Tekiden, those he sees as precious to him. They are the reason he keeps fighting. He sacrifices his right arm to save them from death by iron at the end of the first season, which makes him dependent on Barbatos, a machine that was created for and knows only fighting. His condition then worsens when saving everyone from the mobile armor, and by then he is absolutely bound to Barbatos' destiny as a fighting god of war. But remember, Mikazuki did not really choose to live this life. He was forced to walk this path from the moment he was born. He just decided to make the most of it when he killed others. Mika got dragged into a cycle of never-ending violence he couldn't escape. Orga and Mika are a dynamic duo that are constantly pushing each other closer to destruction. Mika sacrifices his body while Orga takes on the whole weight and psychological stress of the situation. Cheered on by Mika to be better, stronger, to never stop. Orga would not have won the many battles he supervised without Mika fighting them, and Mikazuki would have forever been lost without Orga's vision. Yet, while Orga carefully takes care of every single one of his soldiers and friends, managing the fragile balance of keeping them alive with the never-ending drive to push forward, Mikazuki is much more willing to give away his own life and humanity. You can see this against the mobile armor, where he avoids death by the tiniest of margins, pushing to the limit so he can win. Isurugi Kamis comments on this, saying how his way of fighting is despicable and not graceful because it betrays the fact that Mika has no concern for his own safety. Others have come to the same conclusion after battling Mikazuki, saying that fighting Barbatos does not feel like fighting a human being. Tekken's devil indeed. However, this devil is as human as they come. He is surprisingly mature in an emotional sense. He understands the value of moving forward without stopping as a way of reaching something better to honor the ones that died to make it possible. He is also quite understanding of other people's internal struggles, such as that of his protege Hashmidi, who he constantly classifies as annoying, and yet he evolves from a rather heartless "don't get in my way" in the first fight together when Hush chokes, to a deep understanding of his student's last wish in their final battle, his need for trust and reassurance, telling him to hold the flank despite Hush being seconds away from dying. There's so many characters worth talking about that I could honestly just go on for hours rambling about all the arcs and character developments, but let's leave that for the Snyder's Cut version of this video essay. Having said that, there's still two characters I want to at least mention briefly. These two are McGillis Farid and McGillis Farid is the personification of uncontainable ambition built upon a childish dream. This last bit explains why he respects Tekkadan so much. They are fearfully powerful warriors, yes, but at the same time they are still kids and teenagers. McGillis' backstory is complicated, to say the least, and I get why some would say he's the best character in the anime, and I don't agree, but I get it. McGillis is at his best when he's an active character left to his own devices. Taking his destiny into his own hands, he struggles, fights, and schemes to make his vision of the world become a reality. He shows mastermind levels of planning to make his coup against his father figure, and when he needs to nudge things forward, he even dresses up as a sex man himself. Sex Smirkies. Yes, Gundam Wing is my frame of reference for everything Gundam related. McGillis is ruthless and the prime example of someone becoming what they swore to destroy. Anakin would be proud. Except McGillis was always like this. His whole crusade is against the corruption that has taken root in I will just call it Galihor from now on. Well, the point is, McGillis is guilty of doing the very things he accuses the corrupt Galihorn of doing. Lying, deceiving, betraying, and killing to achieve your own goals. Of course, in his own mind, he is different because his end goal is pure and righteous, restoring Galihorn to glory through the divine authority of the Founders Gundam Vile. Shaped by his childhood, McGillis always believed power was the key to everything. Those with more power are the ones that rule. He dedicates his life to this idea that he is not completely immune to human emotions, as Guile would have you believe. He is hurting a bit for having killed his only friend, especially at the beginning of the second season. Would he have done it again, given the chance though? Of course. Just look at the way he exploits Kar Taishi's feelings for him. He basically feeds her to Tekkadan's devil, knowing full well she will be no match for Mikazuki. And so she dies, believing McGillis will come save her, a knight in shining armor, when it's actually Guile who arrives at his Gundam steed. Come on, it does look a little bit like a horse. McGillis' character does unfortunately suffer the same fate as Light in their respective second seasons. His plans are suddenly much less effective, he makes more mistakes, and never really reaches the big-brain levels of his first season. But for the anime to move forward, this had to be done. First season McGillis would have just been too strong to stop. Prime McGillis is the very embodiment of passion and belief mixed in a deadly sandwich of charisma and skill. A dangerous sandwich, to be sure, but a welcome one. I am kidding, it's the type of sandwich you really want to stay away from. Like Isoroku Camus, I didn't want to accept that McGillis was wrong. I really wanted to believe in his idea for a better future. It's not like the signs of corruption were not there. Killing his best friend? Check.
But I live.
Believing only true power would bring about any change? check, but I mean, Kylie was wrong about McGillis wanting the Order of the Seven Stars, right? Please tell me he's wrong.
Nope.
Oh well, McGillis does suffer from being hit with the Nerf gun, but in the end he loses because of his childish beliefs. Rustall himself says as much. McGillis is the product of a terrible childhood, where all that kept him going was the idea of Agnika Kaeru, which in the end is pretty much only that, an ideal. He genuinely thinks being in possession of Bile, a Gundam, yes, but what is really more of a symbolic representation of Gallihorn than an ultimate weapon would basically turn him into a modern-day King Arthur. Of course, reality is more complicated than that, and the rest of the Seven Stars refuse to aid or follow McGillis in his pursuit. Bile itself, being much more of a symbol than a supremely powerful weapon, shows in how ancient and bare its technology and weapons are, outgunned at every turn as he is by Gundam Vidar. I think that the fight being as close as it is more on McGillis' excellent skills as a pilot. And so he dies. Killed by his best friend, his revolution and ideals gone, reduced to atoms. Again, McGillis is a good character. My only complaint about him is not even the way he gets nerfed. It's that he's basically more of a focus during the second season than Mikazuki. Kudelia is crucial to the first season being as good as it is. She is flawed as a human being, not really understanding the hopeless dog-eat-dog world where Tekiden and the other children live, yet she is willing to accept her ignorance and learn from it. She is in a constant quest for improvement, and it's this what makes her the leading light of the revolution. She is charismatic and pure-hearted enough to make Fumitan side with her, despite the fact that Fumitan was always meant to betray Kudelia when Nobles Gordon gave the word. Kudelia is someone that recognizes her own shortcomings, especially as a warrior, but she has her own strengths and she knows it. There's a couple of scenes that work perfectly well in tandem to illustrate this. The first one shows her feelings of powerlessness and her admiration for Mika's strength, while this other example works the other way around. Kudelia is brave and skillful enough to stop the Gallihorn fleet from obliterating Tekiden. Her importance to the story is easy to understand. I mean, she is Tekiden's golden ticket to glory and recognition. Kudelia is the maiden of the revolution. She embodies the hope for a better life for millions of people in her universe, and her grand speech during the Abrao election shows Kudelia confident in her message and her capabilities. She is ready to change the world. And then she's basically just a background character in the final arc, which I think is part of the reason the second season is so disappointing. I am not angry at the fact that for all of Tekiden's efforts and sacrifices, she doesn't achieve true lasting change at the end of the first season. Real life politics are also a complex and slow affair, but for the whole of the second season, she's mostly just standing there, waiting for something, and this goes against everything that made her character so memorable in the first season. She does begin the second season the right way, determined to keep changing things, but showing how disappointed she is with herself and the way there is still much work to be done. Mainly in the sense that she's still getting help from shady people while not really being able to make much of an impact. Her character does represent the message of the second season though. Kudelia realizes words alone won't bring about true lasting changes, and her mentor Mr. McAnally further says that true improvement comes from careful, slow and steady progress, not by taking the shortest path possible, which is something Orga is doing. Kudelia herself can see Tekiden's immaturity. They don't think for themselves, they follow leaders blindly, and they let vengeance consume them. She is a force of change because she can see and understand this, and she has the influence and skill to change it. She's the one meant to change the world so Tekkadan can stop fighting and just live. But all we see in the anime is how she goes from bystander to savior of humanity with no stops in between. Of course, you can say that this is mostly down to the narrative being preoccupied with showing Tekkadan's downfall, and sure, I get that only Ace Attorney fans would watch 20 plus episodes of Cordelia arguing her way to a political or diplomatic victory. But I would have appreciated the anime showing some of this going on in the background, mixed in as a contrast to Tekkadan's fighting. The anime, however, sticks to its guns. Cordelia ends up changing the world thanks in part to Tekkadan's sacrifice, yes, but mostly because she went about it the realistic adult way. Rostel's victory is similar in that sense. McGillis is the one that has a vision for a better world where everyone is equal, and while he and Rostel are both willing to get their hands dirty to get there, Rostel is much more ruthless and cunning. He goes about his business with astonishing cruelty, not even bothering with childish ideas of a righteous cause, cause that would do nothing but be his downfall. And he knows that once he wins, he will be able to rewrite history and make people remember him as the one that was fighting for a better and more equal world. He doesn't even try to stand on any sort of moral high ground. So if you feel in any way disgusted by his character, well, let me just say you're not wrong. Because so do I. Anyway, that's it for characters I will talk about, though I do love all the other ones. Now let's talk about all the other aspects of IBO. First of all, there's the world building. I think it really manages to convey a sense of depth. It feels like a huge and complex world, and while the introduction of completely new characters and new villains feels a bit too much too fast in the second season, the way it all adds up to the lore behind Gallihorn, the Elite system, the Calamity War, there's just so many tiny details to enjoy. The way it pulls off politics is also superbly done, as even beacons of light and righteousness like Cordelia must deal in the shadows to get what she needs. These types of dynamics are never straightforward, and we are shown that political favors come at a price. The power struggle that goes on inside Gallihorn is fascinating and multi-layered. Its scope turns out to be so big that I can kind of understand how even the mastermind, McGillisbury, failed to overthrow the entire organization. Then we have the controversial topic of IBO's themes. Cause boy does this anime deal with some heavy stuff. The idea of human worth, discrimination, child soldiers, body-altering operations, underage political marriages, and child prostitution among others. This type of topics will make you uncomfortable, and well, it's because they're supposed to. Showing these themes through the ignorant and youthful eyes of the Tekkadan children works. It shines a light on these characters and highlights their lack of maturity and knowledge about the world. It also exposes the way they view serious stuff like battles and death as just something that happens when it really shouldn't be that way. And talking about IBO making you feel stuff, when the anime really pulls off a character's death, it's guaranteed to scar you for life. There's Shino's death, dying the full knowledge that you missed the one shot you had, the one opportunity for victory. Ouch. There's Aston's death, which is just heartbreaking. And then there's the one you will never forget. Yup, I am talking about Laughter. Though you could say that there's death flags everywhere. The way it's carried out is brutal and unexpected. That it happens outside the battlefield where most of the deaths take place makes this one hit especially hard. The sheer nonsense reason why she's killed this one, it makes the blood boil. To kill someone just for a political gain? Tekkadan are not the only ones asking for revenge against the fool responsible. I felt like Organ the gang. Revenge must be had. Suddenly all the logic in the world being spoken by Mrs. Merribit, Nase or McMurdo means nothing. Just give me some revenge. I feel I have nothing meaningful to say about the battles themselves, other than to highlight their brutality, a reflection of not only war itself, where it's kill or be killed, but the cold-blooded instinct that these Orphans develop. It is, after all, the only thing many of them know how to do. I think the animation in some of the fights is gorgeous, as is their choreography. Definitely gets into sublime territory even. There's also the fact that with the diminished role of laser beams, fights move more into one-on-one skirmishes, and this helps highlight the sheer brutality that Gundams and the other mobile suits are capable of. Especially the inhuman levels of destruction that Mika is capable of unleashing. Also, using all that budget and time on the action scenes kinda shows some of the other areas of the anime. Well, that's really all I have to say on this matter, so let's move on to the ending of IBO. If my quick Google search is anything to go by, this anime's ending is a bit polarizing, and I think I get it. The ending is tragic, but overall, I have to say it's a bit underwhelming. Let me explain. There was no way for Tekkadan to survive. They were the embodiment of the very flawed system they tried to overcome, and while the first season was the peak of what they could achieve through fighting, the second season is the price they have to pay for having chosen violence. It was far too late for Tekkadan to be saved by Kudelia and Rostel's new world, but this is not to say that those who understood the situation did not realize how tragic it was. Even their enemies in Gallihorn come to realize that Tekkadan was nothing but a victim of the world they were born into. A world that they themselves as Gallihorn had failed to improve. It's maybe for that reason that I don't dislike Juliet as a character. She's far more than just her plot armor, unlike some characters, and realizes the irony in serving on fighting for a man that embodies the very things she despises. And yet she knows she must crush them without mercy, just like they have done to countless others. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Tekkadan would either have to succumb to the way of life or reshape themselves completely in order to escape their fate.
¿Por qué no los dos?
Yup, both. While most of Tekkadan escapes, Orga, Mika, Agihiro, Shino, and Hush all go down in a blaze of glory. A display of power and sheer determination never before seen, and probably fated to never be witnessed again. And so the leaders and figureheads of Tekkadan die, and their only physical reminder in the world are their names roughly scratched onto the memorial plaque, not even done with the same care as the rest of the names there. For the rest of the world, they were nothing but power-hungry devils that once tried to act as heroes, nothing more than a blemish on history that is best forgotten. The only one to leave any physical legacy is Mikazuki, and that is his son. And that's precisely what the anime's ending is all about. No, not about having kids, about legacy. After Tekkadan as an organization dies, along with its most important members, the world changes. Mars gains its independence, the colonies reach greater recognition, the whole idea and concept of human debris is scratched and sent to the garbage can where it deserves to be. The greatest proof of Tekkadan's victory is that Mikazuki's son will be nothing like his father. Not only will he grow up having two loving mothers, but he will never be as linked to violence as his father was. So in the end, Tekkadan won. Why then do I think it's underwhelming? I think it all boils down to the way the ending is told. Achieving all these things is not an easy task, least of all for an orphaned group of children belonging to the two most discriminated groups in that universe: space children and human debris. No one will ever know the part they truly played in everything, Much in the same way, no one will know that in their dying moments, both Mikizuki and Orga realized that they had already reached the place they were looking for. But the fact is, it's hard for us to really make a link between Tekeren's death and those changes in the world. In a universe where the best intentions go to waste, where killing is necessary to make even the slightest change, we are somehow shown a world that has solved most of its issues. While Tekeren did have to exist to give Crudelia an ironclad determination, all the changes they achieved just don't feel earned. Don't get me wrong, it makes sense. The arguments are sound, but the anime doesn't quite manage to transmit the feeling of it. Say that IBO ends with all of Tekeren's efforts and sacrifices having been in vain. This would not have stood out at all because this anime is heartbreaking all the way through. So again, it's not about the conclusion per se. It's all about the feeling it gives off and the way it can convince you that this makes sense. But then again, that's also why I can't stay mad at IBO. I don't know what I would have done if all the hope shining in young Orge and Miki's eyes had come to nothing in the end. There had to be some light at the end of the tunnel, and there was. So I'm underwhelmed, and I'm sad, but then again I'm kinda happy, and overall I'm just a mess of human emotions. And if that right there isn't the best summary of Iron-Blooded Orphans, then I don't know what is. Thank you for watching.
ああ、だから行くぞ。